adaptive streamliner. But that's kind of an interesting topic actually. Is the loudness level thing. So we were talking about that with the previous group on how actually we kind of don't confine or we don't define our levels that we work to by streaming services. And our argument is always been that it's not about numbers. It's always about feeling. And so when you're running a limiter or as you're turning the gain up or anything like that, there's a sweet spot where it will bring things together and it'll act like glue and it'll give you presence, and then eventually it will start to distort. But we generally are not taking into account, unless specifically told by the client that they want a 14L UFS master, we don't really think about that. In general, all our metering is done with these RMS meters, and we generally shoot between sort of +4 or +8, which in terms of LUFS, +6 is about 10 LUFS. So we're generally always a bit louder than streaming regulations, or regulations, streaming, what's the word? Recommendations. But it's all content dependent. At the end of the day, you're not going to smash a classical track into a limiter, and likewise, you're not going to leave a heavy metal track without any, without limiting. So it's kind of all the decisions that are kind of made with the client or with whoever's music it is, to make sure that they kind of checks all those boxes. And we also don't generally do different masters for vinyl. So we are generally keeping everything as one kind of key master that works for everything. And most cutting engineers will say that if it sounds good and it's been well produced, then they can get it onto a disc. When we did excuse me, when we did the score for Harry Potter, there was some tracks on that where the phase correlation was down here, and it was like drawing circles, which is kind of like the last thing you want on a vinyl record is the left and right to be completely different, because the intrinsic difficulties of cutting a groove. And so when it went to vinyl, we were really interested to see what would happen when it came back, and it came back, and it was still very much the same. The sound hadn't been changed too much. They hadn't monoed up too far. It still sounded like the record we'd sent to them. And so, yeah, if the cutting engineer's good, and again, this is one thing you can miss by going. I don't know if you know about DMM, which is direct to metal mastering, which is where they take the cutting engineer out of the process and they cut straight to metal. They make your basically your metal negative straight away. And in doing that, you're kind of taking out the professionalism and the ears that would kind of make that work. So if that same record that actually worked really well when it got cut went straight to direct to metal, you might find that the test pressings just did not sound anything like that. But it's much cheaper, so a lot of people are going for it these days. And then format wise as well, so one of the tried and tested this CD player has Burr Brown converters in it, and so one of our big tests is when we've made a final CD master, and we actually make a gold standard archive CD. We'll stick it in there and play it, and it just sounds finished, and you can know very quickly that it just sounds like a CD and like a finished product. And it's kind of our like acid test at the end of a big project to just sit down and actually put the CD on.
I do have a question. So previously you mentioned about the A to D converters and so on and so forth. What about your digital to digital converters that are there?
D to D. So we don't use these very much anymore. So these were DSD. So I don't know if you've ever heard of DSD, Direct Stream Digital. It's basically.
Is that like DAX?
No, so it's basically a 2.4 megahertz sample rate, 2.4 million 1-bit stream. I don't know either. But 2.4 million sample rate and a 1-bit. So it's a continuous one. And I just don't understand how that works.
Is it like a clocking?
No, so it's actually a
Pretty
format, so
mad.
it's different to PCM. So it's DSD was a sort of another variation. But I guess it is PCM still because it's still. So this would be a question for Simon. So Simon.
Sorry
But
about
no,
that.
no. So DSD was kind of like the it was supposed to be like the audio files, the biggest kind of the most like most analog signal you could possibly get because it's. But I just I've not had any dealings with it myself. And at one point we used them for. Well, they don't get used for it. There's quite a lot of bits of gear in here. This as well that don't get used anymore. But obviously, as technology's gone on, and Simon's been through various formats and Super Audio CDs and DSD, and there's just stacks of old gear in it.
Yeah, a lot of music players.
Yeah.
Keep bringing out these new formats, and it's like move over the gear, isn't it?
Yeah, because I think there's a couple of bits in there that were about £16,000 each back in the 60s, and Simon's got two of them there, and I was just like, well, what do you sound? It's like, well, they're worth nothing now. They're essentially a high-tech cassette player.
Yeah.
It's just
And eventually a doorstop or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, that leads me on to a question. Will this be adapted for Dolby Atmos at any point?
No, so we did price it all up, I costed it all up, and I did make that plan, and then we got introduced to somebody who had a Dolby Atmos studio all set up and was just using it for a hobby room. So and it was like top of the range, like 20 grand Trinnov systems
Yeah.
and he had no intention of making money out of it. So we just said, hi, we can make some money for you. And so when we do Dolby Atmos work, but at a different studio. And I don't think the investment of putting Dolby Atmos in here would be worthwhile, really.
I suppose it's still in its primacy at the moment.
Yeah, and I mean,
but maybe in a few years' time, maybe.
This is cemented over the years, right? You're kind of you've got your own signature workflow, your own signature sound. It sort of detracts away from the reason why people come to you if you start.
Yeah. I mean, but again, Simon has huge heritage in surround sound, so that was our kind of like, we need to kind of pursue this because there's a lot of clients, and we were kind of hoping that everyone was going to come through, rushing through the doors, going, let's get this done in Atmos.